Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 30th of November. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Hate crimes reached a new level in Jerusalem after unknown assailants torched a classroom and scrawled offensive graffiti at a bilingual Hebrew-Arabic institution that promotes coexistence. Margot Dukevich visited the school today, where she had a first-hand look at the destruction.
Charred remains of a first-grade classroom and hate slogans scrawled on the exterior walls of Jerusalem's bilingual Hebrew and Arabic hand-in-hand school greeted some 600 pupils arriving for classes this morning. Police are investigating the fire that broke out Saturday night, gutted a first-grade classroom, and the graffiti calling for death to Arabs. Kahana was right, down with assimilation, and there is no coexistence with cancer. Dozens gathered outside the school to express their solidarity and say no to terror. Batteries of cameramen and members of the media gathered at the school entrance located in southern Jerusalem's Pat neighborhood as parents and pupils arrived this morning. Education Minister Shai Piron called the incident despicable. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat condemned the attack, saying he implored police to bring those responsible to justice and restore calm to the nation's capital. After visiting the school and meeting with the school principal, Justice Minister Tzipi Livni told reporters the government has adopted a zero-tolerance policy to hate crimes.
I just had the privilege to meet a unique school. It's not the only one in Israel in which you can find Israelis, Jews and Arabs working together, playing together, learning together. And this is something that we need to keep, to support, and I believe that the message coming from this school is something which is completely against the violence that we see now in the Israeli society, the hate, and as a Minister of Justice, I am not only aware of this situation, but I support them on one hand, and on the other we'd act with zero tolerance against this kind of phenomena of hatred in the Israeli society.
Paz Cohen, chairman of Jerusalem's Parents Association, said he was shocked and described the scene when he entered his daughter's classroom and saw the charred books as horrific.
At last night I was shocked. I came to the class and saw the books that are fired and all the walls are fired and the smell was burned, everything was burned, yeah. It was a shocking feeling and a very dramatic feeling for me. But then immediately we get the support from all around us. The municipality, the Ministry of Education, many people from all sectors of Jerusalem came to support the school. So today I'm more optimistic. We should live here together. We will live here together. Everyone can choose his own way, and everyone will choose his own way of teaching his children for tolerance and for existence and for peace.
This is not the first time the school has been the target of hate crimes. In recent months, graffiti against Arabs has been sprayed on the walls a number of times. Shuli Dichter, Director General of the 5 hand-in-hand schools in the country, declared the attack will not deter the school from continuing to promote coexistence.
It's a great sorrow that what happened here. Obviously, we know that there's objection to what we do. But we are not marginal. Obviously, the people here who are coming here are mainstream people, regular people, ordinary people who just want good education for their children. Good education means ultimately diversity. And when you bring your children for diverse education, here sometimes you pay a price, but this is not a price that will stop us. We are establishing here in hand-in-hand, here and in other places in Israel, we're establishing an arena for the children to bring themselves as Jews and as Arabs. The diverse education that they are receiving here enables them to talk themselves out.
It will take days for the smell of the burned-out classroom and charred books to dissipate. It may take longer than that for calm to return to Jerusalem. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today reprimanded his cabinet with a clear message that the public expects the government to return to normal conduct. He also hinted at the possibility of early elections if his coalition is unable to overcome the crisis linked to the contentious nationality bill. Here with more is IBA's political correspondent Ellie Wogelenter.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments this morning at the start of the weekly cabinet meeting were his strongest yet since talk of early elections erupted over the past week. Netanyahu warned his ministers against threats to bring down the government while hinting that he would dissolve it himself if things did not change. Hardly a day passes without us running into dictates, he said, or threats of resignations or ultimatums, while ministers are lashing out at the government and the prime minister. His comments come a day after Finance Minister Yair Lapid accused Netanyahu of playing petty politics and said the two hadn't spoken in a month. Despite the mounting tensions, Netanyahu is apparently exploring a last-ditch effort to avoid early elections by redrafting the controversial Jewish state bill at the heart of the current coalition crisis. Netanyahu is likely to present a new bill with language that would be acceptable to both Lapid and Justice Minister Tzipi Livni, who have both threatened to bolt from the coalition if the bill passes in its current language. Likud Strategic Affairs Minister Yuval Steinitz laid blame directly on Lapid, saying he acts like a 16-year-old boy. He wanted to do everything on his own, but now he complains that no one is helping him. Netanyahu is expected to decide within the next 2 days if the coalition will fall apart, at which time he will call for a new election. Here's what two MKs had to say.
What we need to focus on is to bring the budget to the Knesset, the national budget. And this is the main task that we, the Knesset, and the government has at the moment. Therefore, I think different politicians who deal with internal political issues like primaries and others should stop it, should focus on the national budget, and together as a government we have to bring it to the Knesset and make sure that the budget passes and that Israel will have a budget for next year.
Of course, the coalition is doing everything possible to topple the Prime Minister. The fights which is going on in the coalition, they can't continue this way to hold a government, a coalition. So that's why I'm very sure that the government will fall. Of course, we as an opposition are also trying to do everything and help the coalition to topple and throw down the government and to go to elections. We do not want a new government, we want elections. We will do everything possible to go to elections.
The Prime Minister is waiting for the decision of the three ultra-Orthodox parties who were asked to support his candidacy after the next election, or at least agree to refrain from joining a coalition without him. Shas Chairman Aryeh Deri said last night that he had come to an agreement with Netanyahu. We will not establish an alternative government if he decides to dissolve the coalition, Deri said. We will only decide what to do after the future election. And if the Knesset is disbanded and goes to new elections, the head of the opposition is happily waiting in the wings. Labor Chief Yitzhak Herzog is confident that he will be Israel's next prime minister, saying, I think today it is clear that I present an alternative to Netanyahu. With the correct combination of a centrist bloc, I can come to the president and form the next government. Asked how his words were consistent with recent polls showing his party will not win enough seats, Herzog said that he is convinced that things will look different after the elections. In the meantime, the cabinet is still functioning. It unanimously approved a bill today intended to prevent the infiltration of African asylum seekers into Israel. The new version of the law will allow the government to hold asylum seekers for up to 20 months in the Cholot detention center. It is unclear, however, whether the new legislation will withstand a high court challenge. Aaron?
Thanks for that report. With rumors flying about moving up elections, polls are showing Prime Minister Netanyahu in a free fall. According to the Dialogue survey published in today's Haaretz newspaper, about one half of those asked said that the Prime Minister should retire, and just 45% think that he should run for re-election. 52% are unhappy with Netanyahu's performance, while a record low 38% express satisfaction with his performance. Netanyahu can take comfort in the fact that he is still preferred over any other potential candidates for the job as the best suited to lead the country. 35% chose him, 17% supported Labor Chairman Isaac Herzog, 8% backed Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, 7% were for Finance Minister Yair Lapid, and 6% selected Economics Minister Naftali Bennett. As far as the all-important question as to which party they would vote for, the poll shows Likud with 24 mandates, Bennett's Abait UD with 16, Labor 13, The prospective Moshe Kachlon faction had 12, ahead of Lieberman's Israel Beitenu that came in at 11, which was the same number of mandates allotted to Lapid's Yesh Atid faction. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in front of the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem last night to protest against the proposed Jewish state bill that they claim will further alienate Arabs by diminishing their basic rights. Prime Minister Netanyahu says that the bill that he favors will help to guarantee individual rights for all citizens, including non-Jews, but would also further anchor into law Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people at a time when the Palestinians and much of the world refuses to recognize it as such. The demonstrators were unconvinced by those arguments, with one saying that the nationality bill is indicative of a young generation learning how to hate and become violent, and with no appreciation for the human rights of others. The selection of Major General Gadi Eisenkot as the next IDF Chief of Staff is being applauded in both the top political and military echelons. Alluding to his own selection back in 2011 amid the scandal that became known as the Harpaz affair, outgoing Army head Benny Gantz expressed happiness over Eisenkot's appointment and said that he was even more pleased about the respectable way that it was carried out. Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon called Eisenkot the right man to lead the IDF in the coming years and said that he brings to the job professionalism, leadership, and judgment of the highest standard. Eisenkot is due to be sworn in on February 15th. Arab League foreign ministers have agreed to formally present a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council that will set a time frame for the creation of a Palestinian state. The ministers set up a committee that will begin to line up international backing for that resolution. The decision follows a meeting of the ministers in Cairo to discuss the latest regional developments. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas said that if he does not receive answers from Israel regarding his demand to resume peace negotiations on the basis of the pre-1967 lines, he will proceed with his unilateral bid for statehood by joining international organizations and treaties. The Arab League ministers and Abbas also reiterated their opposition to Israel's demand for recognition as a Jewish state. The United States is expected to exercise its veto power to block the Palestinian resolution, but that can be overcome with a 9-vote majority of the 15-member UNSC. Pope Francis wrapped up his 3-day visit to Turkey today, where he said that Islamic extremists are carrying out a profoundly grave sin against God in Syria and Iraq. The pontiff also called for interreligious dialogue and action against poverty to help end conflicts, as he met with dozens of young Syrian refugees being cared for by the Salesian religious order. Turkey is sheltering some 2 million people who fled the fighting in the Arab Republic, including thousands of Christians. During a joint service with the spiritual head of the world's 300 million Orthodox Christians, Patriarch Bartholomew I, Francis said that worshippers of all faiths cannot remain indifferent to the cries from victims of the inhumane and brutal war next door. It was the 3rd time in as many days that the Pope made reference to the Islamic State insurgents. In a shared statement during a service at the Ecumenical Patriarchate, both Francis and Bartholomew called on Muslims and Christians to work together for the sake of justice, peace, and respect for the dignity and rights of every person. A fundraiser is being held in Tel Aviv tonight to raise money for the child refugees from Syria. The event is being sponsored by the Israeli Committee for Humanitarian Aid to the Syrian people. Philosophy professor Dr. Yossi Yona is one of the organizers and told IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan that because of Syrian sensitivities, the aid will not be labeled as coming from Israel.
It is not as if we're going to solve the problem. It is not as if we're going to bring the refugees back to their homeland. But I think it is to express basic human concern, saying, well, the Syrians, the Syrian people, it is not expressing any solidarity or any empathy or sympathy to the regime itself. If anything, it might be that the regime itself is partly or crucially responsible for the plight of these people. So we're concentrating on the very expression of sympathy or empathy and solidarity with the plight of the people. We live in the Middle East. They're our neighbors. We should be concerned about them.
How would this aid that you want to collect now be brought to the Syrian refugees?
Most of the aid being gathered are delivered to an international organization called Save the Children. And they're in charge of how to deliver it further on. to the refugees or refugee camps scattered all over the area. So the moment that we gather the money, of course, within this organization, it is sort of termed earmarked. This is Israeli money. But as far as the way how it goes down, how it trickles down to the refugees themselves, it is not necessary that it would have this label, this is Israeli money, because of course, as you must be aware, there is sensitivity. And I don't think the sensitivity has to do with how the people themselves would receive it as much as how political forces, factors would might want to interfere with that. So we exercise a bit of sensitivity and this field, of course.
But on the other hand, this is an opportunity to show these people who are our neighbors who are suffering that Israel is helping them, no?
It is an opportunity to be humane.
Up until now, we really haven't seen much in Israel when it comes to the Syrian refugees, caring for them. Why is that?
Because we are bogged down by our own problems, and we've got many of them. And some people might say we don't have the luxury of raising our eyes and looking ahead and saying, well, look, it might be the case that there are some people in the world suffering more than we do. And it doesn't mean, when I'm expressing solidarity with certain people that I give up, or it would be at the expense of solidarity, of deep concern with my own poor people. As far as I'm concerned, of course, I'm there. This is what I do most of the days of the year. But I think that, as I said, I'm not only Israeli, I'm an Israeli patriot. I love my people. I'm first and foremost concerned about my people. But I'm also a human being, and I should and I am concerned about the plight of people no matter where they are.
The fundraiser is being held at 8 o'clock tonight in Tel Aviv at the Zionist Organization of America House on Frisch Street. In other regional news, at least 1,000 angry Egyptians hit the streets of the capital to demonstrate fury over the dismissal of all remaining criminal charges against former President Hosni Mubarak. Yesterday, a Cairo court overturned an earlier verdict sentencing the 86-year-old former leader to life in prison for complicity in the deaths of 239 demonstrators during the 18-day revolt against him. As the verdict was announced, armed security forces sealed the iconic Tahrir Square that became the epicenter of anti-Mubarak protests in 2011 that ended his 3 decades of iron rule. At least one person was killed and more than 85 arrested as police forces dispersed the mass crowds by firing tear gas, birdshot, and water hoses. An Islamic State fighter has been filmed firing his weapon in Turkey, apparently holed up inside of a grain depot. The country's main Kurdish HDP party is claiming that the Islamic State snipers have been taking up positions on the Turkish side of the border to fire on the town of Kobani and are accusing Ankara of turning a blind eye to ISIS terrorists operating on its soil. 30 people were killed in clashes in 4 separate ISIS suicide attacks in the town yesterday, including a car bombing in which the Observatory for Human Rights claims that the vehicle was brought in from Turkey. Ankara is vehemently denying any support of the extremist Sunni jihadis, which Turkish government officials say poses a threat to their own national security. Here at home, and while Tel Aviv is arguably the robust, innovative, high-tech nucleus of the country, here in Jerusalem, an entrepreneurial incubator is carving out its own niche and helping Israelis to team up with investors and create the next big startup. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan brings us the story.
On the top floor of a gray concrete building in Jerusalem's Talpiot industrial zone is Pico, a place which aims to bring high-tech entrepreneurs to the capital. It's a workspace that allows innovators to share resources and inspiration. Co-founder Isaac Hassan says they were trying to strengthen a network between creativity and entrepreneurship in Jerusalem.
A working space. People come, they establish their companies, and we have funders who are based here, and they run their own companies, their own investments. What we have created is a neutral space where people can come and do events, all about entrepreneurship, and build their companies.
There's a comfortable buzz created by the work-sharing space and open bar.
The perfect staging ground for what I'm doing here in the Jerusalem ecosystem. My fund invests only in early-stage Jerusalem born or based startup companies. given the unique atmosphere of Pico, the way it inspires innovation, the traffic that we get here of entrepreneurial startup founders coming in here to meet with the various people that are officing here. It makes it a natural place for me to set up my office.
Venture capitalist Ben Wiener is backing the startup called Roadshows that connects artisans and retailers. Pico chose this location as a social mission for the city.
What we've created is something in Talpiot. Why Talpiot? It's the heart of Anglo-Saxon Jerusalem, and we believe that it was time to sort of create a space like this. Part of our idea is that it is possible to create a business in Jerusalem, and in perhaps not the nicest of neighborhoods of Jerusalem, we created this space and felt that it was a good sort of flag in the sand to say, come on, we're open for business, let's do more things.
Ben Wiener believes that Jerusalem has its magnet that trumps the Tel Aviv startup scene.
Jerusalem, as you know, is a blend of often people that have moved here from other countries or come with different experiences, are sensitive to experiences in markets that go far beyond the borders of the city and certainly the country. And that's what you want in a startup company. You want a startup company that understands the markets that it's going to try to penetrate. And a lot of our founders come from those markets, are sensitive to those markets, and I think it gives them an advantage actually over some other startups maybe that are born and bred in other parts of the country.
There's a lot of cross-pollination at Pico between startups, investment bankers, and investors sitting side by side building a fertile community. Pico hosts frequent events, rolling back the tables to make a conference room.
That's one of the things that we really enjoy, bringing together entrepreneurs either with funders or with people who can help them develop their businesses, east and west, every type of demographic. It's a special city with special challenges, but at the same time, special possibilities to create very interesting businesses.
Google, Intel, and others have development centers in Israel, and many high-tech companies are thriving here. But Pico and other entrepreneurial incubators in the capital are hoping to put Jerusalem on the startup map. Aryeh O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Taking a look at local finance, and with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down across the board this first day of the trading week. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team is telling us to expect partly cloudy skies and isolated rain showers in the north tomorrow. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Aryeh O'Sullivan will be at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.